Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're looking into a group that's often labeled with just one word, cult. But, I think we can go a little deeper than that.
Yeah, for sure.
This is the Order of the Solar Temple. We've got some academic papers, some investigative articles. I think we can really get a balanced view of what this whole group was about.
Definitely.
So, where should we start?
What I think is so interesting about the Order of the Solar Temple is, I mean, first of all, we should probably call it OSTS for short.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they attracted, I mean, some of the people that they attracted, you wouldn't expect.
Right.
I mean, we're talking, successful professionals. We're talking like Robert Ostagai,
Okay.
who was a mayor, Jocelyn Grand Maison.
Wow.
She was a journalist, and even Guy Berringer,
No kidding.
who was a nuclear engineer.
So these aren't like people living on the fringes of society.
Exactly.
These are people who are very much integrated and
Yeah, they're very successful. Like, what drew these people to the OSTS?
yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And it makes you wonder, what drew these, quote, ordinary individuals
Right.
to a group that ultimately ended so tragically.
One of the things that we're going to have to talk about is the fact that the OSTS had some pretty interesting roots in some of these esoteric traditions.
Oh, okay.
Like the Templar Knights, Rosicrucianism,
Okay.
Theosophy. These were groups that, really emphasized secret knowledge and spiritual hierarchy.
Yeah. Not really stuff you'd like, chat about over coffee.
Right.
But was there some sort of common thread, something that tied all these traditions together?
Oh, for sure.
And ultimately made them appealing to a group like the OSTS.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at them, they all share this focus on like a hidden wisdom. Like there's a deeper truth that is only accessible to like a select few.
Okay.
And they tend to believe in this like spiritual hierarchy with ascended masters.
Ascended masters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who are basically guiding humanity's evolution.
So it's like, being in the know. It's like a secret society.
Exactly.
There's that sense of exclusivity.
And I think that for a lot of people, this idea of a spiritual hierarchy might have resonated.
Yeah.
Especially at a time when like the world, it often feels pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
So to have this kind of order and meaning.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. So, I mean, it seems like the OSTS kind of took this exclusivity, this idea of exclusivity a step further, though. A lot of the sources talk about these meticulously staged mass suicides
Right.
that the group called transits. And we're talking bodies that were arranged in specific patterns. They were wearing ceremonial robes. Some of them even had plastic bags over their heads. I mean, it's pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
Why such a deliberate presentation?
Well, I mean, if you think about that word transit, it's kind of a clue itself. It implies a journey, like a transition to another realm.
Yeah.
So the OSTS actually believed that they were leaving behind this world, like a corrupt world, to ascend to this higher spiritual plane.
Wow. The plastic bags are a detail that really stuck with me. Was there a specific reason behind that element?
I'm not sure if there's anything definitive in the sources.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but it's possible that the bags were supposed to symbolize a kind of separation from the earthly realm, like a way to seal themselves off from like the material world. It's chilling for sure.
It is.
And it shows just how deeply committed they were to these beliefs.
So what were some of the specific beliefs that might have led them to this really tragic end?
Well, one of the central beliefs was their fascination with Sirius.
Sirius.
Yeah, the star system.
Right.
And they believed that Sirius was the home of these ascended masters that were guiding humanity.
Okay.
And they thought that communicating with these masters was like the key to achieving enlightenment.
And how did that belief play into this idea of transits?
Well, the OSTS really believed that Earth was like on the verge of destruction.
Okay.
And so they thought that these transits were a way to escape, like a way to join these ascended masters on this higher plane before it was too late.
So it's like a cosmic evacuation plan.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. The sources also mention this idea of the age of Aquarius.
Right.
Can you explain that concept and how it fit into the OSTS worldview?
Yeah. The age of Aquarius is this astrological concept, right?
Right.
It basically suggests that we're transitioning into this new era, a time of like peace and enlightenment.
Okay.
And the OSTS believed that they were basically at the forefront of this transition,
Mm.
even if it meant like leaving Earth behind.
So it sounds like they were really drawn to these ideas of renewal and transformation,
Totally.
especially at a time when the world maybe felt very uncertain.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. The Cold War was ending, environmental concerns. I mean, these anxieties, these are real. And the idea of a new age, where everything would be better, must have felt very appealing.
Yeah, it's a hopeful thought, I guess.
Right. And then on top of that, you have this idea of reincarnation, which was another key belief.
Right, right. The OSTS saw the physical body as temporary, just a vessel for the soul.
Exactly.
How did this belief system kind of influence their actions?
Well, I mean, if you believe in reincarnation
Right.
and you believe that this higher realm is waiting for you,
Yeah.
death might seem less like an ending and more like a transition to a much, much better existence.
Yeah.
So this belief could have actually made those transits more palatable.
More appealing.
Yeah, even desirable for some.
Yeah. It's a chilling thought, but it makes sense within their belief system.
It does.
There's another element here too, and that's this idea that they were under attack.
Right.
The OSTS really felt persecuted,
Mhm.
especially after, they started attracting some media attention and started facing some legal issues. So that kind of fueled this siege mentality. They thought they were surrounded,
Yeah.
and it made this idea of escape seem even more urgent.
Yeah. So you've got this mix of beliefs. You've got a corrupt world on the brink of collapse. You've got the promise of this new age. You've got this higher realm that's calling to you. And then you've got this feeling of being surrounded by enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to see how this could lead to some pretty drastic actions.
It's true. And of course there are the leaders themselves. You can't talk about the OSTS without talking about, Luc Dray and Joseph DiMambro. I mean, these two figures really loom large in this story.
It seems like these two played a pretty significant role in shaping the OSTS and ultimately its tragic fate.
Absolutely. Jaret was like the charismatic speaker, the public face.
Initially, he projected a lot of optimism about the future.
Mm-hmm.
But, reading through the sources, it seems like later on he became a bit more disillusioned, maybe even desperate.
Hmm. What about DiMambro?
DiMambro.
He seems like a more enigmatic figure.
He was, yeah. He was a lot more reclusive, operating kind of, in the shadows.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah, behind the scenes. And some of the sources, kind of paint him as this manipulative figure,
Really?
potentially facing some, personal or organizational crises,
Hmm.
in those years leading up to those transits.
So you have Jaret, you have this charismatic leader,
Right.
and then you have DiMambro, this shadowy figure in the background,
Right.
both seemingly guiding the OSTS down this path.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how people got drawn in the first place.
Well, it's not like they were just recruiting off the street. They
Yeah.
were much more strategic than that.
So there was a process, like a pipeline for bringing people into the fold.
Definitely.
What was that like?
Well, the sources mention these gateway organizations.
The organization.
Yeah, like these, think of them like Archeria clubs
Okay.
that would offer workshops on things like nutrition,
Oh.
alternative health.
So like relatively innocuous, harmless.
Right. These
Yeah.
seemed very innocent.
So they started with things that were familiar and appealing. It was a way to connect without revealing the more extreme aspects of the OSTS's beliefs right away.
Exactly. I mean, this is a pretty classic strategy. You start with something familiar,
Mm-hmm.
and then as people become more invested, you gradually introduce the more radical ideas.
Okay, so you've got these clubs, these seemingly innocuous clubs.
Right.
And then you also mentioned Jaret's lectures earlier.
Right.
And you said he was quite charismatic.
Oh, very charismatic.
What were his lectures about?
Well, he often spoke about, alternative health and spirituality,
Okay.
which at the time were becoming very, very popular.
Yeah.
And his charisma and his ideas, they attracted huge crowds. I mean, he was like a magnet,
Wow.
just drawing people in.
So you've got these clubs, you've got Jaret captivating people with his lectures.
Right.
What about the OSTS's more esoteric beliefs? How did those get introduced?
Well, a lot of that relied on the teachings of this French esotericist named Jacques Brier.
Okay.
And his writings were just this blend of Rosicrucianism, theosophy, and Christian mysticism.
Oh, wow. A real esoteric cocktail.
Exactly. And what Breyer did was he kind of developed this system
Okay.
of astrological calculations.
Okay.
And these calculations basically pointed towards this coming apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
And according to him, only a spiritual elite were going to escape to this higher realm.
So Breyer provided the ideological framework, the justification for the more extreme beliefs, I guess.
But in many ways, yeah.
Okay.
His writings offered this seemingly rational basis
Right.
for their apocalyptic worldview.
Right. It's fascinating how they combine these seemingly disparate elements, right? You've got alternative health, esoteric traditions, apocalyptic prophecies. It's all like mixed together.
It's true. It's a strange mix.
And it's important to remember the historical context too, right? I mean, this was a time of a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty. The Cold War was ending. There were concerns about environmental collapse, social upheaval. They were searching for answers.
Absolutely. And I think in a world where, you know, a lot of people were feeling lost and disillusioned,
Right.
a group like the OSTS offering a sense of belonging, purpose,
Yeah.
and even like a pathway to a higher realm.
Right.
I mean, it could seem incredibly appealing.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked a lot about how the OSTS drew people in.
Right.
But what about the organization itself?
Yeah.
How did it function? Who held the power?
Well, the OSTS was very hierarchical.
Okay.
I mean, they had different ranks and degrees,
Yep.
and members could ascend as they demonstrated their commitment.
So it wasn't just about believing the right things.
Right.
There was a whole system to navigate.
There was.
Okay, so what was that like? What did that look like?
Well, I mean, these advancements, they often involve these rituals,
Okay.
initiations. They drew a lot on, Templar history,
Okay.
Rosicrucianism,
Uh-huh.
Masonic traditions.
Right. So they were really creating their own kind of elaborate world,
They were
complete with their own costumes and ceremonies and
secret knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like their own little secret society.
Right, a hidden order
Exactly.
with its own rules, its own traditions. I mean, I imagine that sense of secrecy and exclusivity probably added to the allure as well.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
It's like being part of an elite club,
Yeah.
an inner circle with access to something special.
But this hierarchy also creates a power dynamic, right?
Right.
Because those at the top, they hold a lot of sway over the people below them.
Absolutely. And this is where the question of manipulation really comes in.
Right.
The sources suggest that leaders like DiMambro, they exerted a lot of control over their followers' lives. I mean, influencing everything from finances to relationships.
It's unsettling to think about how easily people can kind of surrender their autonomy to a leader or to a group that's promising them, salvation.
It's true.
It makes you wonder what ultimately pushed the OSTS towards these transits, these tragic transits.
Yeah. Well, and we have to remember that those transits weren't just isolated incidents.
Yeah.
They were the culmination of this really complex web of beliefs,
Right.
and anxiety
And power dynamics.
to power dynamics, exactly, that played out over years. And that's actually what we're going to delve into next. So those transits, those didn't just happen out of the blue.
Right.
The first one that we know about, that was in October 1994 in Switzerland.
Okay. So that must have been like a real turning point for the group.
Absolutely.
What exactly happened?
Well, I mean, try to imagine this.
Yeah.
In this quiet village, Cherry, yeah.
Okay.
23 bodies were found inside this farmhouse.
Inside a farmhouse.
Oh, wow.
And it turned out that it had been secretly converted into this ritual space.
So this wasn't just some random, tragedy. The sources mentioned something about staging.
Yes, and it's incredibly eerie. The bodies, they were dressed in these ceremonial robes
Okay.
and arranged in this star pattern.
Wow.
And a lot of them, they had plastic bags over their heads. It was clearly planned.
It's disturbing to think about how much planning must have gone into something so horrific.
It really is.
And this is just one location, right?
Sadly, no.
Really?
Just a few miles away in a village called Granges-sur-Salvan.
Granges-sur-Salvan.
Yeah.
They discovered another 25 bodies in this underground chalet.
Underground chalet.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And these events, they happen at the same time.
It's hard to even comprehend the scale of this.
It's huge.
What could possibly drive people to such extremes?
Well, we keep coming back to this, but I mean, it seems like a perfect storm of factors, right? This
What?
apocalyptic worldview, this belief that the world was ending,
Yeah.
that only a select few would be saved. I mean,
Okay.
that must have created this incredible sense of urgency.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that feeling that doom is coming,
Exactly.
that must have been so intense.
And then, of course, you have the influence of the leaders,
Hmm?
especially DeMambro.
Right, right.
He really exerted this powerful hold over his followers, convincing them that he had the key to their salvation.
It's a classic example of how charismatic leaders can manipulate people. But wouldn't some members have, like, questioned these actions?
You would think. But the OSTS, they were very good at what they did. The rituals, the hierarchical structure,
Right.
it was all designed to reinforce their beliefs and strengthen loyalty.
Hmm.
So the deeper someone went into the group, the harder it became to question anything.
So even if you started having doubts, the pressure to conform must have been just overwhelming.
Totally.
And this wasn't the end, right?
Yeah.
The transits continued.
Sadly, yes.
Wow.
In December 1995, another 16 bodies were found in France.
Oh my gosh.
And then in March 97, 5 more in Canada. It's a heartbreaking pattern.
Each one of these events must have just reinforced the group's belief system, creating this terrifying cycle of violence.
Unfortunately, yes. It's important to remember, though, that not everyone in the OSTS, not everyone followed this path.
Right.
Some members actually managed to break free.
Really?
Yeah. Disillusioned,
Yeah.
horrified by what they're seeing.
It's amazing that even in a group as seemingly controlled as the OSTS, that there were still people who managed to get out.
It is.
What prompted them to leave?
Well, for some, it was a slow process. As the OSTS's teachings became more and more extreme, as the demands intensified, they started to see the cracks in the facade.
They started to realize that things weren't what they seemed.
Exactly. But for others, it was like this sudden realization, a specific event or conversation that just shattered their illusions.
Imagine the courage it must have taken to question everything you believe in, to walk away from your community, everything you thought you knew.
It's incredible. And their stories really highlight the resilience of the human spirit.
Yeah.
Even in these seemingly hopeless situations, there's always that chance to break free.
I'm curious about the role of support in these situations. Did having people to confide in, did that help them escape?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Having a support network, both inside and outside the group, that was crucial for so many.
It gave them a different perspective.
It did. It gave them that lifeline to pull them back.
It makes you wonder about the individuals who stayed, even as the transits were unfolding. How could someone remain loyal in the face of such horrific acts?
It's hard to grasp, but we have to remember that these individuals, they had invested years of their lives, their money, their relationships.
Right.
Leaving would have meant admitting they were wrong.
It would have shattered their whole reality.
Exactly.
So it was like choosing between their belief system and their sense of self.
It's possible.
Wow. Were there any other factors at play here, do you think?
Well, you can't discount the role of indoctrination. I mean, years of indoctrination.
Yeah.
The OSTS, they carefully crafted this narrative that demonized the outside world and reinforced this idea that they were the chosen ones.
So leaving would have been like betraying everything they believed in.
Even if it meant staying in this dangerous situation, it shows how powerful belief systems can be, how they can distort our view of reality. And it's also possible that some of them truly believed that these transits were necessary, that they were part of some greater spiritual plan. It's a chilling thought, but it really highlights how powerful belief can be, how it can override even our most basic instincts.
We've explored the beliefs that drove the OSTS, the factors that led to these horrific transits, but we haven't talked much about the group's finances, which, the sources suggest played a significant role.
Right, right. The OSTS's financial dealings are a key part of this. We see this complex web of transactions and investments, and it points to a very deliberate strategy for accumulating wealth and power.
It seems like there's more to the story than just blind faith.
Oh, yeah. This goes way beyond spiritual seeking. This is about money, this is about power, and the lengths the some will go to control others.
So we've talked about, the darker side of the OSTS, right?
Yeah, the manipulation, the transits. But you mentioned that their finances were kind of a key piece of this puzzle.
They were.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, it seems like money was a big part of the OSTS. our sources describe this pretty elaborate system
Really?
of financial dealings, investments, property.
Like stuff you wouldn't normally associate with a spiritual group, I guess.
Right, exactly.
Was there a particular person who was like kind of the mastermind behind all of this?
Well, the sources all point to Joseph Dumambro.
Dumambro, right, right.
He was the one who often stayed in the background,
Right.
but he had a real head for business
Okay.
and a way with people that helped him bring in these wealthy investors.
So it wasn't just about recruiting believers then.
Mm.
It was also about attracting people with money.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of members were required to contribute financially, sometimes even selling their homes or giving up their savings to join.
Mhm.
That sounds like, those classic, quote, cult tactics, like
Yeah.
isolating people, making them dependent.
Yeah, you do see this pattern in groups like this. But we should remember that plenty of organizations use similar strategies.
Yeah, that's true.
Think about, some intense political groups or even, multi-level marketing schemes.
Right.
It's not always a sign of a quote cult,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. It's about being able to recognize those tactics no matter where you encounter them.
Exactly.
But back to the OSTS, what did they do with all this money?
Well, DiMambro, he basically used it to build this kind of a financial empire.
For the OSTS?
Yeah, for the OSTS. Real estate, businesses,
Hmm.
even precious metals.
Wow. So while they were preaching about the apocalypse, the need to, renounce material possessions,
Right.
they were actually accumulating a pretty significant amount of wealth. I mean, it seems pretty hypocritical.
It was. The hypocrisy was definitely there.
Hmm.
The inner circle of the OSTS, they lived very well. Luxury homes, expensive cars, frequent travel.
Wow. So in stark contrast to what they were demanding of their followers,
It was.
I can see how that kind of double standard would lead to some tension within the group.
Yeah, and I think it probably contributed to that growing dissent we were talking about earlier. It can't be easy.
Yeah.
Seeing your leaders living in luxury while you're told to give up everything you own.
Right. Right.
It really makes you question, what the OSTS was really about. Was it really spiritual enlightenment, or was it just, gaining power and wealth?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And it's not like they were being discreet about their wealth either.
Right.
I mean, all that money, it had to attract some unwanted attention.
It did. I mean, law enforcement, they started investigating the OSTS, looking into things like money laundering, fraud, tax evasion.
So on top of all this, internal pressure and these apocalyptic beliefs,
Yeah,
they were also facing external pressure from the authorities.
I
So it
see.
almost becomes like a vicious cycle, right?
Yeah.
Their suspicious activities attract scrutiny, which then fuels their paranoia and justifies their extreme actions.
It's a really tough situation. They were feeling trapped
Yeah.
with, enemies closing in on all sides.
And as that pressure mounted, it seems like the leaders,
Right.
they became even more desperate, more willing to resort to those horrific transits as a way to kind of maintain control.
Tragically, I think that's what happened. The OSTS's story it's a cautionary tale
Yeah.
about the dangers of unchecked power, the corrupting influence of wealth, and the allure of belief systems that promise these easy answers in a really complicated world.
So after this deep dive into the Order of the Solar Temple, I mean, what can we take away from all of this? What does it all mean?
Well, I think the OSTS shows us, how fragile reason can be,
Yeah.
how powerful belief can be,
Mhm.
and how even, seemingly normal people
Right.
can be drawn into darkness.
Yeah.
It's a story that should stay with us. Remind us to think critically, to question authority, and to never compromise our own moral compass, no matter what.
Yeah. It's a reminder to be vigilant,
Absolutely.
to recognize those warning signs of manipulation,
Yeah.
indoctrination, and to hold on to our values, even when we're faced with those who claim to have all the answers.
It's true. The OSTS's search for meaning, for belonging,
Right.
ultimately led to tragedy.
Yeah.
And their story reminds us that the pursuit of something greater should never come at the cost of our humanity
Right.
or our freedom.
Mm.
It's a lesson that I think we should all carry with us, as we navigate our own paths.